Hi guys. Since I'm not there, I thought I would try doing one of these recordings so that way you still get some instruction and you get some ideas to what you're supposed to be doing with this week's lab. So this week's lab, if you haven't had an opportunity to take a look at it yet, is all about enzyme activity. So it's a pretty fun little activity where you're going to get an opportunity to check for yourself whether or not enzymes truly do speed up chemical reactions. And then you're also going to do a study with looking at enzyme activity and temperature. In other words, asking the question, does temperature affect enzyme activity? And so it's a pretty fun activity. And it's one where we're going to take advantage of enzymes that you have. You are going to be the source of our enzyme because this study is using the enzyme amylase. And amylase is an enzyme that breaks down starch. So it starts the digestion of starch, and it starts right away in our mouth, and it's saliva where the amylase is contained. And so you're going to need to harvest some of your own saliva today. So you have a series of test tubes. So what you'll notice is that Devin gave you 5 large test tubes and then some small test tubes. Today, you're going to need the larger test tubes. Okay, and then you can place them into your test tube rack so that they stay upright if you choose to, if you have one of those racks. So what we're going to be looking at today is looking at the digestion of starch. And one of the reasons why we're going to work with starch is because you have this enzyme called amylase in your saliva. And so it will be easy for you to harvest that. The other reason why we're going to be working with starch is because starch is easy to find if it's still present, because when you add iodine to the starch will turn a blue or black color. So this is just a mock-up here of the kind of colors that we could anticipate in here. If starch is present, you will know the starch is present because here's pure starch right here. When you add iodine to your test tube, if the starch is present, then the iodine, which is kind of a yellowy color like this here, it will turn black, kind of a dark blue or black color. So if the iodine turns a blackish blue color, then you can say the starch is still present. If, however, the iodine does not change to a dark color, instead it remains its color, which is kind of a brown orangish color, if it remains its normal color, then you will know that there is no starch present. Because again, the iodine turns dark in color when it comes in contact with starch. So for this lab, you're going to need a few materials on your own. You're going to need to supply some of the materials. We've provided for you a pipette. So look at those disposable pipettes that you have. One of the first things that you'll want to do is get familiar with it, because it is a graduated pipette, so it does actually indicate on it the volumes. And so take a look at your pipette and find the 2 milliliter volume on it. So locate that, because you're going to be adding 2 milliliters of saliva to your test tubes. So let's get started on this. You're also going to need some potato chips. So it works well with potato chips. It also works with popcorn. You could do this with mashed potatoes, just about anything that is starch. And so remember, starch is plant product, And so you should be able to get a good reaction with any of these particular kind of common household things. Okay, you're also going to need cornstarch. So I did not ask Devin to give you some cornstarch. So you're going to need that, and you're going to need iodine solution. And you can get iodine typically, if you don't already have it at home, you can get it at the Dollar General or at Walgreens or Rite Aid. You're going to need a plastic Ziploc bag. I think you still have your metric ruler. We've provided for you the 5 test tubes. You do not need a wax pencil. A Sharpie pen will work just fine. And then your disposable pipette. So here are the materials that you'll need before you get started. Okay, so here's kind of what the iodine looks like if you choose to get it at CVS. It's not too expensive. Okay, so what you're going to do is you are going to place a handful of potato chips into a sealed bag, and then you're going to act like a mechanical digester, just like what your teeth would do by, smooshing and crunching up those potato chips. Okay, so the second step is for you to collect your saliva. So in one of those test tubes, just start spitting. And you're going to need to get started here, 2, 4, 6, 8. I think you're going to need about 8 mils of saliva to get started. And I'm doing that from memory. So we might get down to the bottom and realize you don't need that much. But about 8. So if we were in the classroom, I would have you gather up 10. I know that. So, and you might need more because I had to adjust this lab in order so that you could do it at home. Okay, so what you're going to do then is once you've got your saliva, then take your 4 remaining test tubes and label them 1, 2, 3, and 4. Fill test tube 1 75% full with water. Okay, so about 3/4 of the way full with water. Using a metric ruler and your waxy pen, or your Sharpie pen, then draw a mark that measures 5 centimeters up from the bottom of test tube number 2. Okay, then fill that tube with cornstarch. So this tube here is going to have cornstarch in it, and it's going to serve for us as a control. You will add water into that tube until it's 75% full. So it should now have the same volume of liquid in it that your test tube number 1 has. So that's what we're going to try to do, is we're going to try to get all those test tubes to be the same volume. Okay, so you've got to get that cornstarch now to dissolve. And so if you cover the tube with your thumb and you shake it, that will help. You could put, if we were in a lab, I would have you put a little barrier between your thumb and the cornstarch solution, just in case there's any kind of biological molecules on your thumb. I wouldn't want to contaminate them into the cornstarch. Okay, so maybe a little piece of saran wrap or something like that. Okay, now we're going to go to test tube 3 and 4. So using a metric ruler and your Sharpie pen, draw a mark on tube 3 and 4 that measures 1 centimeter from the tube's bottom. Okay, so in test tube number 3, you're going to add now your crunched up potato chips into your tube to the 1 centimeter mark. Then add 2 mils of your saliva. So there's our enzyme right there. Then fill up the remainder of the volume there up to the 75% full mark, just like your tubes 1 and 2. So now 1, 2, and 3 are all looking the same. In test tube 4, add those crunched up potato chips and then fill it up to the 75% mark with water. Okay, so right now you've only used 2 mils of your saliva. So place the tube into your test tube racks. okay, because I thought you might just have a cup here so that they remain upright. Let those tubes sit at room temperature for 20 minutes. And after 20 minutes have passed, then you're going to add a 1/2 ml of iodine to test tube number 1. Cap it with your thumb, with a piece of saran wrap there between your thumb and the tube. Invert it. Take a picture of your tube. Add 1/2 ml of iodine to number 2. Cap it, invert it, take a picture of it. Add 1/2 ml to number 3. Do the same. And then repeat it one more time for test tube number 4. Okay, once you've taken your pictures, try to really understand your data, okay? Because what you have here is you've got your water only, you've got your starch, you've got your potato chips. So your test tube number 3 actually will be your potato chips with your saliva. So these two are reversed for the way I wrote the directions. So you'll have your potato chips with saliva and then your potato chips only. Okay, and we want to check to see, does the enzyme amylase speed up the chemical reaction? So we're asking if it's speeding it up. So you should know which of these test tubes here you're going to compare in order to make that final determination, whether or not it speeds it up. Okay, now we talked about this the last time that we were in lab together doing the transformation experiment, and that is that you're getting really good. You guys are really good at being able to say that something is a control. A test is actually a control. So you've got controls in this test as well. And so I want for you to identify which of these test tubes are controls and what are they proving to you. So you want to be able to argue for me or to me why you needed to carry this out in 4 test tubes. Are all 4 of these treatments necessary? And if they are, what are they proving to you? Okay, so that's your first experiment. Okay, so then your second experiment is to look at the effects of temperature on enzymes. So you've already got some saliva in your test tube, and actually what I think I would do is I probably would start spitting again. Because even though we only use 2 mils of the spit here, your saliva here, I would be a little bit nervous that amylase, as it's sitting on your bench top waiting for this experiment to come to completion, that it might become denatured. Okay, and so hopefully you understand what I mean by that, and you understand the term denatured. That's something you can anticipate on your next exam. And so my concern is that I just asked you to spit about 10 mils of saliva into a test tube, but now you only used 2 mils. The rest of it has now been sitting at room temperature for 20 minutes. I'm a little nervous that it might become denatured. So in fact, what I would do is, now that I'm ready to do the effects of temperature, here's where I would really start doing my spitting. Okay, so for this one, you need to rinse out your test tubes. Okay, so you're going to use those same test tubes over again. So all of that potato chip and all of the saliva and the iodine can all go down your drain with no problem. And so rinse those out so that they're nice and clean. And then now what you're going to do is still spit a bunch of saliva into one of your test tubes. Then we will use test tubes 1, 2, 3, and 4 again. Okay, so you're going to mark them, and then you're going to mark them at 1 centimeter from the bottom of the tube. Okay, Then you'll add 1 centimeter of crunched up potato chips to each tube. Then fill it halfway